Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning to our EAS friends across the country. Listen, there are people listening in other states. How about that? We'll talk about that in the second cup of this morning's podcast. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm your host, Robert Wakefield, president of NAPS Branch 32. Thank you. Thank you, studio audience. It's great to have you all here. So let's go ahead and let's pour that first cup. This March 29th, join us in celebrating a century of trust and a century of service. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union is hosting its 100th annual meeting celebration at the luxurious Sonesta Hotel from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Mark your calendars for a night of history, festivities, and fun. For more details and updates, like and follow our Facebook page and be a part of this monumental milestone. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for today's first cup, I want to dive into something that I think is essential, and yet I think is something that is often overlooked. It's a phrase that you'll probably use 1,000 times in your career, and you've probably heard it multiple thousands of times just while you're working. And those two words are interchangeable, and it's dignity and respect. You know, that's just more than just a little catchphrase that we hear. It's at the heart of what makes the U.S. Postal Service tick. So let's explore a little bit about what that really looks like. So we'll start with the basics. So what do dignity and respect really mean in a workplace like the U.S. Postal Service? Well, I'll tell you. It's all about one thing. It's how we treat one another. Thank you for listening, and then that ends the podcast for the day. It's just how we treat one another. It's simple. It's not complicated. It's not overly thought out. It's just simply treating the other person, with value. You're creating an environment where everyone feels supported. It's just a simple way to do business, and it's the way we should work with our employees all the time. It's just not a nice idea. I mean, the policies of the Postal Service guide every employee, every manager, and every supervisor in this very thing. As a matter of fact, take the standards of conduct, for example. The policy spells it out clearly. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. It says that. I don't care if you're a mail carrier, walking your route, or a supervisor managing employees. The same principles apply. This respect is the foundation of what makes the workplace thrive. And let's face it, if we don't have respect, and if it's not going to thrive, what have you got? You got nothing but chaos. I often would say it's controlled chaos is what we do in the Postal Service sometimes. Just manage to get through another day. Let me ask you a question. This has just popped into my head just now. What do you think about the Postal Service's relationship with NAPS? Do you think there are times where we are not treated with dignity and respect? In your local branches, or whether you deal with the district managers or whatever, do you feel like there are times that NAPS members are disrespected? I would love to hear from you. Send me a message and let me know what you think at SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. But speaking more about the dignity and respect thing, we have to avoid harassment. Harassment is something that no workplace is immune to. And as a matter of fact, the U.S. Postal Service has a zero tolerance policy on harassment, meaning that any kind of harassing behavior is a no-go. Plain and simple. Harassment can include stuff like offensive comments or unwanted advances or anything that creates a toxic environment in the workplace. They're all about making sure that everyone feels safe and respected, which is why the Postal Service does take this seriously. And just to keep everyone on the same page, the Postal Service provides all kind of training and resources that helps recognize what harassment is and how to prevent it before it becomes an issue. It's all about creating an environment where people can just come to work, do their thing, and feel good about it. And here's the thing. Dignity and respect aren't just policies. They're skills that we can learn and we can practice. And that's why the Postal Service invests in these training programs to go with that. So why does all of this matter? Why does it even matter? Because it's more than just words. They're the glue to all relationships in the Postal Service. When people feel valued, they do their best work. And that benefits everyone, from employees to the customers they serve. It does not matter. I know there's been times where people have been mistreated, especially on Zoom calls. It could be everyone from your immediate manager to the district manager to who knows who. But I'm going to tell you something that it's just absolutely uncalled for. We're all pulling the same way. We're all trying to get the mail delivered. When you stop and think about it, it's just mail. We're not, sending a man to the moon. We're just trying to get the mail delivered. We're trying to do it safely. We're trying to do it in a way that's efficient. And we have 1,000 different reports now that can tell you whether you are succeeding or if you're failing in those areas. There's some areas in the country where they require their managers to get on a Zoom meeting and make sure your camera's on. It's got to be on your face. It can't be, shooting on the wall or behind you or anything. You've got to show your face. And you've got to sit there the entire time. And if you have to get up and leave, you've got to put a message in the little message board that you're going to the window or you're going to the restroom, whatever it is. That seems a little disrespectful to me. We're all adults here. We can certainly, not have to go through the exercises of showing dignity and respect. It's just something that should be as natural as breathing. But unfortunately, it's not. So the reason I am bringing this up in today's podcast is because in our next podcast next week, I'm going to start talking about the telecom improvement program that NAPS put into place a few years ago. And we're going to talk about some of the addressing some of the things that happen, especially on Zoom calls, that can be less than respectful and showing no dignity whatsoever. So that's why I wanted to bring up the dignity and respect topic today, because it's going to lead into what we're going to talk about in next week's podcast. All right. That's going to do it for the first cup. Let's go ahead and pour that second cup. For 100 years, The Nashville Post Office Credit Union has proudly served the postal community, bringing financial security and support to those who deliver our world. Founded in 1925, we've stood by our members through every challenge, providing trusted financial services and personalized care. From savings and loans to modern banking solutions, we've evolved to meet your needs while keeping our community spirit alive. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our second cup today, I wanted to, as I mentioned at the beginning, the podcast is starting to take off thanks to you. Really do appreciate you listening and sharing it with all of your EAS friends. February numbers are in, and they count the number of downloads is how they rate these. So these are all downloads. And so this is the month of February, the downloads for the month of February. And in February, we had a total of 178 total downloads. The top states, Tennessee was 58. Thank you, Tennessee, for doing that. Coming in second was New York. Thank you, Dee Perez, for promoting that to all your New York friends up there. Appreciate that. Illinois had 13 downloads. South Carolina, 11, and Georgia rounds out the top 5. Now, for those who listen internationally, yes, we had some listen internationally. I don't know if they got anything out of it, but they did. Someone in India downloaded 4 times. Okay, great to have you, India. Listen again. We loved it. We love it. And the UK and Russia each had 1 download each. So when we released our very first podcast in October of 2024 through February of 2025, the total downloads of the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast, drum roll please, 1,034. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate that. I don't know how long we'll do these podcasts. As long as they're popular, we'll keep them up. But I want the podcast to grow. I want it to go all across the state of Tennessee, all across the country. So it's imperative that you share this with all of your friends. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for listening to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast, presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union, celebrating 100 years of service this month. It's going to be an exciting time. So now you know what to do. You know the drill. I want you to subscribe. Please like the podcast. Share it with all your friends like we were just talking about it. And I still haven't heard from any branches lately. Let me know what branch you are listening from. I'd love to hear from you. You can send that to the Saturday Cup of Joe at gmail.com. All right, everybody, I'm Robert Wakefield. And remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.